Greetings, this is Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn. My name is John Savers, I'm your host, and today we'll take a look at a couple of films, beginning with Willard. This is a film whose screenplay and direction was under Glen Morgan. Shirley Walker was in charge of music, Mr. McLaughlin in charge of photography, editing by Mr. Koblenz. Stars a Crispin Glover, a gentleman named Ermey, and a lass named Laura Harring. Cast of many rodents also, I might add. It might be that some note, I didn't catch the name of the person in charge of animal actors, but some nods should go that way, I guess. The film kind of opens up with a nervous music of the post-psycho type, and occasionally blended with this music are darker sounds associated with classic horror films, sounds of the Night on Bald Mountain type. We think it was pretty effective in getting the right mood started here. And while the music and the initial credits are given, we're getting shots of what appears to be a house at night, inside, close-ups of things such as clocks or urns and so forth. We have at this moment, at the end of all the credits and so forth, the sound of what seems like an old woman saying, "Willard, there are rats in the basement." This sort of sets the tone. A seer might say the rats also are Fledermice in the belfry. But at any rate, that will come later, I suppose. Now, the film is one which has a thin script. It's not a verbal film at all. Therefore, it takes some doing to fill this thing out. And there are plenty of shots which are more or less of keys turning, kind of lingering shots of urns, clocks, staircases, and of course the various rodents and so forth. This does have the way of filling up the film, and however, it's also a little portentous and pretentious. Now, the character played by Glover, Willard, dutifully goes down to check on the alleged rats in the basement. He is a young fellow. He looks to be in his late 20s, early 30s perhaps. Has dark hair. It's parted almost in the center. It's just slightly off center. He's a presentable fellow, lean. He has a long, high-arched nose. And is effective in close-ups. In this particular film, with a limited script, silent film techniques are important, and mugging expressions and so forth are important, and I think that Crispin Glover does well. The depiction of his mom, she really looks doddering, grayish, and so forth. And by actress skill, she seems to put forth that she has rheumatoid arthritis of the hand. But getting back to the night scene here, we have Willard going down to the basement of the house to check on the rats, or the allegations thereof. He really doesn't want to do it. He's kind of a milquetoast-esque fellow. He likes to kind of tune Mom out, although he is a loving son in his way. He goes down to the basement, and sure enough, he sees signs of rats. He has a flashlight. We see a couple of rats We see a curious white rat also, and this white rat seems to be somehow or other suggestive of a leader. At any rate, we have a camera cut, daytime. Willard has told his mother not to worry about the situation. He goes to a supermarket and he purchases some rat traps. He is shown at home sort of meditating on the mechanism. He'll pull back a rat trap spring and then let it pop and do it again and again and again, whack, whack, whack. Well, this kind of suggests that there's a cruel streak perhaps in Willard. Also, it uses up time, which seems to be important in this film. So now I might also add that the color in this particular film is sort of garish. It reminds me of old Technicolor, actually. At any rate, Willard sets his traps. There are a number of tete-a-tetes with his mom, and she's a kvetching old lady and not always pleasant to be around. He sets the clock that he has for about 2 o'clock and goes to his bed and gets in bed, and you get the impression that he is anxious to see himself victorious and sleeps with an ear cocked for the popping. It does not take all that long for there to be a series of pop, 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 pop as the rat traps go off. He leaps out of bed to go investigate. He gets down there and he finds out that every single one of the rat traps has popped, has sprung, but there are no rats captured. Well, it just gets him very annoyed. What gives with these rats, these sphinx, these diabolically clever creatures, not a one caught? It kind of reminded me of my attempts at catching fish, actually. I would put a minnow or a worm on a hook and put it out into the water, the lake or whatnot, and I would pull it up in a little bit, and there was no sign of a minnow or a worm. Well, after a few fishing episodes of this kind, I developed my new philosophy, which is eat, sleep, and watch bass fishing on TV. Willard is made of stronger and more determined stuff than I. He goes back to the store from which he got the original paraphernalia of the rat traps, and this time he goes for a kind of adhesive plate or paper. He doesn't seem to really want to get into chemical warfare. He wants to basically use mechanical, external type ways of getting rid of these rats. Perhaps he's a little squeamish. But at any rate, he lays these adhesive strips on the floor of the basement and again goes off hoping to find these papers filled to the brim with wriggling rats. Well, he does come back and he does find that he has at least caught one. It's a great white rat, possibly that leader, what he thinks is the leader maybe, and is trying desperately to get away. Now, he watches for a little bit and somehow or other he seems to have a kind of a sympathy with this rat and he determines maybe to help it. He's also noticed a very big rat, a rat which he will come to know called Big Ben. He does get this white rat who seems to be the leader. All the other rats are kind of a dirty brown. And he gets this white rat and he takes it up to the bathroom upstairs and with some oil attempts to free the rat. while talking in a very soothing way to the rat. Well, he has just about freed the rat when his mom wants to use the bathroom, and so she insists he works diligently to get the rat free. She's a little bit suspicious of what he's doing in there. And he finally does so. The rat kind of scampers into a robe, a sleeve or something like that, and he exits. His mom coming in, changing of the guard. She's kvetching as usual. Also, she sees the oil and she jumps to a wrong conclusion, a prurient conclusion, and chastises her son. Willard, you're too old for that. Why don't you find yourself a nice woman? Well, by this we know, we didn't know before, that Willard is a bachelor. He takes the white rat with him to bed. And by now we have fully realized that the rats have a phallic symbolism here in this particular film, or sexual, I shall say. Normally it's phallic, but generally there's a sexual character to these rats. And the fact that Willard takes this particular rat to bed speaks volumes. They have a tete-a-tete on the pillow. And before you know it, Willard has christened this particular rat because he thinks it's smart for reasons entirely unknown. He dubs the rat Socrates. Well, this is a very special rat and so forth. Some people might think that there are overtones in this film, the fact that this particular rat, special rat, is white and all. But at any rate, we also get cuts to Willard going to his office. He works at a place called Martin Stiles. His name happens to be Stiles. His father had formed this company and has passed away, and the company has gotten into the hands of a Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin is a rather ruthless, loud, bullying kind of man, and he lets Willard have it at every opportunity. And the fact that Willard usually is 20-25 minutes late for work certainly gives him pretext. So he likes to humiliate Willard Stiles, the son of the founder of the company, before the other employees, does it at every opportunity. However, by looking at the employees, you get the notion that they have had their share of this kind of thing themselves. At any rate, they're all in the same boat. So we see this unhappy situation. Willard is also unhappy with Mom, and he finds only relief with this new love, Willard, Socrates. Now, Socrates and Willard get kind of an army of rats together. Willard has started to feed the rats in the basement. Socrates is in control. He's numero uno. They follow him. They take his advice. Now, people don't ask me about this communication and so forth, this apparent rich language that the rats have and so forth. I can only say that Willard's communication with these rats is far, far less daunting than that of that pet psychic on television on Discovery Channel. At any rate, he only has to master the language of the rats, and he seems to have done it. And he seems to have been able to figure out that Socrates is a very smart rat. Now, Big Ben, the big rat that he noted, also is no slouch in the intellectual department. He's a smart cookie, but he seems to have an attitude. When Willard takes Socrates to bed, there are scenes in which Big Ben tries to crash the bed and make a threesome here, which is totally unwanted by Willard, who chases irately this Big Ben rat away. Big Ben kind of takes it okay. I mean, probably because of Socrates, who has a way of smoothing over hurt feelings that are engendered by Willard's rather megalomaniacal attitude towards his rats. He goes back to the office. His boss, Mr. Martin, has a very fine Mercedes, and he is on occasion, at this occasion, Willard late again chastising him. There's a temporary seated in Willard's seat at the office. Willard, irate, goes in to talk to Mr. Martin. We find out that Mr. Martin cannot fire Willard until Mrs. Stiles dies. This was part of the agreement when the business came over from Mr. Stiles to Mr. Martin. He said, I can't fire you, but I can certainly dock you for your lost time, and I'm going to dock you 2 weeks' worth or wage, one check. This just floors Willard, takes his breath away. You can't do that, and so forth. And Mr. Martin said, watch me. He said, now you can get a $250 lawyer and take me to court, and my $400 lawyer will tie yours up for 20 years. Then I'll be dead, and I won't care one way or the other. You may win, but who cares? At this point in time, you're going to be docked. Well, this just irate makes Willard irate. He's seething. He's blowing his top. He's transforming somewhat out of his milquetoast aspect into this sort of megalomaniacal character. He goes home. He gets Willard, gets Socrates and the rats into satchels, big satchels. And Big Ben manages to force one of the satchels. About 12 normal rats are kicked out. So they go over to where Mr. Martin lives and they attack his car. And the rats chew up the tires. And this is the rather childish revenge that is had by Willard. Well, the next day, there is quite a lot of glee at the office, and Mr. Martin finally comes in, and he's pretty angry about the whole situation. Subsequently, Willard takes Socrates to the office and puts him into his desk. There's some sort of Christmas-like decorations or something in the storage area that needs to be worked on. He volunteers to do it, takes Socrates with him, and the rat is noticed by one of the ladies who screams and so forth. Mr. Martin comes forth with what looks like part of a metallic stand for a Christmas tree and impels Socrates in a number of brutal jabs. I'd like to go back to an earlier point in the film for some elaboration. Now his mom dies. He's visited by the temp who has kind of eyes for him, sympathetic toward him. She leaves him a cat for company to help him get over the grief. And the cat is trapped by the Big Ben-led horde of rats and done in. Also, Willard is visited by a man who is with a bank or lawyer or some such who informs him that Willard's mom and dad had an estate which was very debt-ridden, and he would have to sell the house, and even so, he might not have anything left. The man leaves. Willard's stunned. You can't do this, and so forth. Outside, he sees the man laughing and shaking hands with Mr. Martin. Well, let's get back to the point in the film where we departed. And he takes the rat back to his abode and kind of puts Willard cleaned up, puts Socrates cleaned up into an urn. And there are kind of looks of j'accuse by the beady-eyed Big Ben. There may be repercussions here. But Willard seems to think he's in control of the situation. Moving on, revenge on Mr. Martin by gathering Big Ben and all the rats into a couple of large satchels and goes to the office late at night where Mr. Martin is working. How did Willard know he's working late? It doesn't say. We see Mr. Martin doing his work. He gets tired and decides he wants to switch over to internet porno. About this time, Willard releases the rats who chase down the fleeing Martin and chew him to death. Well, we see a kind of an ugly turn here in the personality of Willard. Later, Willard is free of Socrates and the bond there. He's pretty much alone, and after the loss of his loved one, Socrates, he's thinking maybe to move on to this temp. Well, there is a denouement in which Big Ben and Willard have their ultimate test of power over the digs and the rats and so forth. And Willard is chased to the very top of the house. The tip is called the police, and they've called exterminators to boot, I think. And they get there just in the nick of time to bail out the trapped Willard and to exterminate the rats. So we have a kind of an epilogue to the film in which we see Willard in an insane asylum. This is a thoroughgoing homage to the last scene in Psycho. He is suddenly joined by a white rat which seems to have dug a hole through into his cell. He instantly sees this white rat as a reincarnation of Socrates. Socrates, too, he welcomes Socrates, his old soulmate, and they immediately hit it off as before. We have Willard warning Socrates that they'll have to be very quiet, very still, and so forth, so that no one will notice that there's anything wrong with him. They'll say, why, he wouldn't even hurt a mouse.